What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to have a look at an update to the ban list. Now, let's be perfectly clear as we start this video. No, there have been no new cards that have been banned or restricted. That is not what we're talking about. What has happened is that the lovely folks over at Bandai, over at the One Piece card game, have gone and given us more information about why cards have been banned, and they've also added some addendums which are very interesting and tell us about what might happen in the future. Sounds good? Good. So the other day I told you Marco was restricted, and they've given a bit of an explanation as to why that is. That is of course the OPO3 5-cost Marco. The OPO2 4-cost Marco had already been restricted. That happened a while ago, so we don't need to worry too much about that one. That is, well, frankly, that's something that we looked at previously. We don't need to look at it again. And they gave us a bit of information about exactly why they went and banned that Marco. This card has an on-play effect that can greatly increase the game's tempo in one's favour, and an on-KO effect that makes it difficult to deal with. The on-play only on your turn lets you KO one of your opponent's characters of 3,000 power or less, and on KO you can trash an event card to play it rested. And then if it's on your turn, you then get to KO one of your opponent's characters. When combined with Whitebeard Pirates and Izzo, they are essentially the two cards that best search for Whitebeard Pirates, hence why those two have been picked out. The ideal game plan centered around this card can be easily replicated and has had a significant impact on the win rate of red decks. It's a good card, but it's also a card which is very easy to find, which frankly makes a pretty big deal. Being a good card, kind of annoying. Being a good card is really easy to find, even more annoying. As a result, decks using Roanoke, Azoro, and Edward Newgate dominated tournaments for a longer period than envisioned. We have therefore decided to designate this card as a restricted card in order to maintain a healthy metagame and promote deck diversity. So they've been really clear right there. What they're saying is very straightforward. Too many red decks are winning. We want a greater variety of decks being played and doing well, so we have gone and restricted this to one to try and stop red decks being quite so good and help other decks be a little bit better. They're not hiding it, they're being just strictly there. But there are two things at the bottom which are very interesting to me. This restriction is only enacted in regions using the English language version. Please note that cards listed as banned or restricted here may be removed from the list due to future changes in the metagame. Now, we're going to have a look at the other cards that have been banned in a minute, but I want to just stop here for a second, because this is incredibly important. They are very clearly only making this change for the English version of the game. Remember when they went and banned Moby Dick to slow down Edward Newgate, and Kabaji to go and slow down Nami? They did basically a simultaneous ban across both the Japanese, the Asian version of the game, and the English, the Western version of the game. That basically happened at the same time and was announced pretty much within like an hour or two of each other. It was very clear what they were doing. It's been a few days since this ban list came down. We have heard nothing about these cards being banned or restricted in Japan and other Asian territories, to the point where at this stage I don't think it's happening. Bandai and the One Piece crew have been really good when things are happening that affect both the West and Japan at the same time. They are telling us that's the case. They're not telling us that's the case. And remember, we've just started the OPO4 meta. Japan has already started the OPO5 meta. Us and Japan, we play the same game. We have the same meta. But we do not have it at the same time. So yes, the meta that Japan's got, we are going to have the OPO5 meta, but that set doesn't come out till December. We're not going to have this meta till December. It really does seem like these bans and restrictions and new ones are not coming out over in Japan. Because remember, the last two restrictions were Marco and Radical Beam. Oh, and the big bad Edward Newgate, the 9-cost from OPO2. All three of those were restricted last time around. In July. That was 3 and a bit months ago at this stage. They have not been restricted in Japan. As a side note, it does say specifically on them over on the website, this restriction is only enacted in regions using the English language version. Japan have not restricted those cards, even though it's been over 3 months since we did. And there is a reason for this, and the reason is extremely simple. Red is not crushing in Japan like it's crushing over here. And it really is as simple as that. Now, I do find this very, very interesting because there was a long period, there were like 4 or 5, I think there were 5 big events in a row in Japan where the only decks that made the final were Newgate and Rebecca. In the OPO4 meta, like 4 or 5 big tournaments in a row where they were the only decks that made the final of these big tournaments. That has not been our experience. We've not seen Rebecca do anywhere near as well. But also, red has been a little bit too good. I showed you this the other day. Over on Limitless, the top 3 decks right now are red decks. The top 3 decks are red decks. That's absurd. That is absolutely absurd. And that's why red kind of had to go. But Japan haven't copied our homework on that one. Japan didn't do that as well. Japan left those restricted cards alone. And it's been long enough now that it's probably not happening. And like I say, they have since gone into the OPO5 metagame, and it seems like they're happy not restricting those cards. The other important thing is, those 3 restricted cards, your Marco, your Radical Beam, your Edward Newgate, it says on the website, this restriction is only enacted in regions using the English language version, as I told you. It does not say on the website, please note the cards listed as banned or restricted here may be removed from the list due to future changes in the metagame. Now, as a general, and also incidentally, it does not say that for Moby Dick or Kabaji either. Now, maybe that is actually to be taken at face value. Those cards are not going to be changed. They could not come back, whereas the newer bans could. I rather suspect they've written it on this new one and they probably will at some point add it to the old ones. The ban and restricted list is not set in stone. It is subject to change. However, the last restrictions, your Newgate, your Marco, your Radical Beam, and your original bans, your Moby Dick and your Kabaji, are not listed as might change in the future. So I suppose for the time being we have to assume, until we're told otherwise, we have to assume that they cannot come back. Although I'm calling it now, I think there is a chance they could come back. But it doesn't say that on the website. So 2 very, very important points here. Number 1, these bans and restrictions, the new one, they are for the English version of the game only, not the Asian version, the Japanese version of the game. That is not what they're doing. And they are potentially coming back in the future, because when OPO5 drops, the metagame is going to change. We've seen that Purple Luffy is really good, as an example, and there is every possibility that what happens is these cards do come back. Because obviously, the big ban we saw was Newgate. Newgate was the big ban, because everything else, they just kind of nerfed decks and really slowed them down. The Newgate ban, they just flat out banned the best deck in the game. And we've got loads of data here, right? There's no controversy. Newgate was the best card in the game. Clearly the best card in the game, and we had the stats to prove it. They just flat out banned it. Although cards related to this card have already been designated as banned or restricted cards, I've showed you a few already, decks using this card continue to dominate tournaments. We have therefore decided to designate this card as a banned card in order to maintain a healthy metagame and promote deck diversity. Yeah, Newgate's gone. I think some of the other cards might come back. This one's going to take a bit, honestly, because they saw how much it won. They clearly didn't like it. One of the bans that people liked the least here was Nami. OPO1 Nami went and got banned. It's a searcher, the likes of which we've seen a million times for a million different traits. So why did they go and ban it? The on-play effect, that's look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find a non-Nami Straw Hat, pop it in your hand, rest go to the bottom of your deck in any order, makes the game plan for these cards easy to replicate. Basically, it makes your deck way more consistent, and is highly compatible with the effects of Roanoa Zorro and Trafalgar Law, thereby significantly improving the win rate of those decks. In addition, even without those two leaders, incorporating Straw Hat Pirates type cards in a deck with this card is likely to improve the win rate of all decks with red cards. We have therefore decided to designate this card as a banned card in order to maintain a healthy metagame and promote deck diversity. We've had a lot of red Straw Hat cards. Obviously, Straw Hat's like the main characters of One Piece. Obviously, we were going to get a bunch of them, but we have had a bunch of them, and they have actually ended up being very, very good. Look at things like Rush Zoro, as an example. Look at things like Rush Luffy, as an example. These are very, very good cards that have seen a whole bunch of play, and can just be like casually dropped into decks if you so wish. Essentially, it's not just that Nami's got a good searching ability, it's that the cards for which he is searching are particularly good. And that incidentally is why. That's why Nami gets banned when all these other searchers stay around. That's why Izzo is still here, but Nami isn't. Searching Whitebeard Pirates is pretty good, but now with both the Marcos restricted and with Newgate banned, it's a lot less good. Ace is still a viable red deck. And there's still every possibility Ace becomes a good deck in the future, and Ace is a good red deck that can use Izzo as a searcher for Whitebeard Pirates. But it's not the same as what Nami has done for the Straw Hat crew, and that's your point. And then the other one they banned was Curly the Dan, very similar to Nami, except instead of being for Straw Hats, it was for one-cost red cards. Like Nami, this card's on-play effect makes its gameplay easy to replicate. It is also highly compatible with the effects of Roanoa Zoro and Trafalgar Law. That's actually pretty relevant here, because Zoro gives all your characters an extra 1,000 power, we'll see about the one cost in a second, and Law lets you swap a character for an opposite colour, green or red, with a 5 cost or less if you pay 2. So you play around with a 1 cost red I'm going to show you in a second, and then Law lets you swap them. That does kind of make sense. In addition, even without those leaders, incorporating red 1 cost character cards in a deck with this card is likely to improve the win rate of all decks with red cards. We have therefore decided to designate this card as a banned card in order to maintain a healthy metagame and promote deck diversity. Because we had all of those 1 cost cards, but then we had stuff like Makino, for instance, which will beef up one of your 1 cost red characters by 3,000, which is pretty ridiculous. And then you've got all your other kind of super really good 1 cost red cards we see, like Atama, as an example, that sees a bunch of play. Was Nami before they went and did the whole, banning Nami thing. And there's a whole bunch of others we can have a play around with. I mean, the vanilla promo Sunny was actually a really good card, because it's a 3k, but Makino makes up to a 6k, Zoro makes up to a 7k, and all of a sudden we've got a 1 cost 7k character? Yeah. And Curly the Dan lets you search these out far more easily. So, what can we take away from today? Well, we've got some more information about exactly why they're banned, although a lot of the time it is basically what we thought. But it is only for the English game, not the Japanese. It has been a few days, Japan has not banned them, and it specifically says on the website it's English only. And they are specifically noted as could be reflected again in the future. Maybe they're going to be changed in the future, which it doesn't say for the others, but clearly that's got to be the case, surely. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. For now, I want to know what you think about this. I want to know your ideas. I want to know which of these cards you want to get back. And I want to know the answer to the question a lot of people have been asking. Hang on a second. Shouldn't we have gone and banned Big Mum? Charlotte Linlin, the 10 cost? Because you know what's going to happen after this ban list, according to what everybody's saying anyway. Yellow's going to get stupid good. And Big Mum's going to be a problem. For now, I want to know what you think about all of this, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk One Piece and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far, the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.